I live across the street from Charleston's Children's Hospital, and there's a police and fire outside right now. They're thanking all of our medical workers,
Wow.
which is beautiful. I was concerned for about 30 seconds and then heartless.
Okay. All right. Well, we're good on this end. If you All right, if you want to start, I'm going to help the people who are having trouble getting in the meeting.
Oh, great. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Yeah, I was going to say good evening. I guess good afternoon for all of you. Good evening from Charleston. Good afternoon from Los Angeles. But it really is my pleasure to be with y'all tonight and appreciate you having Deb and I with you. Obviously, we would have preferred to be with you in person, but we'll take what we can get. We're doing lots of these digital meetings these days, as I'm sure you are as well. So we'll make the best of this situation, and we'll hope to host you in Charleston in the near future, whether as a group or individually. We'll make that happen all the same. So the goal here, what Leah's asked me and also Deb to do a little bit of, is to give you both a sort of a taste of South Carolina and especially Charleston Jewish history, tell you a little bit about what our Jewish community looks like today, and also on Deb's side to tell you sort of what our student experience looks like. What's it mean or look like to be a Jewish student at the College of Charleston, or to some extent a Jewish student in the South today. What does that look like? And before I do that, I'll give you a little bit of personal details, who I am. And so to start off, I'm Mark Swick. If my accent doesn't give it away, I'm not a Southerner by birth, or as Charlestonians would say, I'm from off, as in I'm from off the peninsula. I happen to have a map of Charleston over my shoulder. You can see Charleston is a peninsula, and I'll talk about that again in a couple minutes. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. suburbs in Silver Spring, Maryland. Actually, Deb is from not too far away from that area in Maryland as well. And I attended Indiana University in Bloomington to study Jewish studies and history, and very happily, Rabbi Schatz is smiling right now. I was lucky enough to run into your incredible assistant rabbi who recruited me to join Indiana's Jewish a cappella group, Hushir, and very happily became a wonderful friend in the process. Upon graduating from college almost exactly a decade ago, as you just heard me say a couple minutes ago, yikes, I did indeed make my way to the South. I first moved to Jackson, Mississippi to work for the Goldstring-Woldenberg Institute of Southern Jewish Life, which I understand that you're sort of familiar with already, because the ISJL was going to be the organization helping Leah to plan your originally scheduled Southern Jewish journey. I completed the 2-year education fellowship at the ISJL, so imagine sort of a Jewish itinerant Teach for America, where I spent the majority of my time on the road, traveling to small and large Southern Jewish communities. I was working with clergy and Jewish educators and meeting the educational needs of our partner communities. As is often the case, that job led to my current position at the College of Charleston, where I serve as community liaison for the Jewish Studies program and executive director of the Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina, which is a component part of the Jewish Studies program, but is a statewide organization, statewide membership-based organization. That's enough about me, though. That's not what you came to hear about. And so let's take a deep dive into Charleston's proud Jewish history. So I'll admit that it's a little bit of hometown bragging, but I say with no less conviction that Charleston is the best place in North America to study Jewish history and among the best to experience Southern Jewish life. Lots of other cities duly make great claims, and it's true if you scratch the surface. Certainly almost every other place has a remarkable Jewish history to tell. But what the Jews of Charleston and the state of South Carolina have is longevity. And they share with other non-Jewish citizens a spirit for preservation that's protected a significant portion of the historic infrastructure of our city over the years. The history of Jews in Charleston is uniquely long and well preserved. The conventional story begins with the fundamental constitutions of Carolina, a little piece of which you see right here. Can you see my mouse or just the screen? Mouse also?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Fundamental Constitutions of Carolina, which was authored by John Locke, this friendly looking guy on the left side of the screen. Though never enacted, this instrument of rule expressed the British Lords Proprietors' original intent to allow Jews, along with, quote, heathens and other dissenters, unquote, to settle and practice their religion. In common with French Protestants, Jews were welcomed for their mercantile connections and also as white people of European ancestry, to help offset a growing majority of enslaved persons of African origin. The plan for plantation slavery was writ into the fundamental constitutions, which dictated a pattern of land ownership and agriculture predicated on enslaved labor. Counted as whites, with whites, Jewish settlers could enjoy not only religious freedom, but extraordinary opportunities to participate in the economy and even in governance. As slave masters and mistresses, brokers and merchants, ship owners and patrons and wardens of the workhouse, Jewish Carolinians followed the mores of white society. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this is often an uncomfortable narrative. It's not something we necessarily like to talk about as much now, but it is certainly a part of our history all the same. Jacob Rader Marcus, a historian and Reform rabbi, wrote in his 4-volume History of American Jews that over 75% of Jewish families in Charleston, also in Richmond, Virginia, and Savannah, Georgia, owned slaves, and nearly 40% of Jewish households across the country did. The Jewish population in these cities was relatively small, though, so the total number of slaves they owned represented just a small fraction of the total enslaved population. Eli Faber, a historian at New York City's John Jay College, reported that in 1790, Charleston Jews owned a total of 93 slaves. Charleston trade swelled in the decades after the Revolutionary War, and its population grew in kind. This map I'm showing you right now is a map of Charleston circa 1800 or so. The peninsula looks a little bit different now. They've since filled in landmass in this area. The College of Charleston is right around here in the center of the peninsula, and I'm talking to you from right over here on this area, and Deb is right around here. So we are all very close, both to where we work and sort of the center of Charleston. Charleston's not
Mark, I don't know, maybe this number is wrong, but Charleston is what, 3 miles wide, the peninsula?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, 2.5 or 3 miles wide, east-west, and from the tip, the southern tip, what we call the battery, to sort of the top, the neck of the peninsula is about six or so miles. Though that then extends into North Charleston. So what's considered downtown peninsular Charleston, this area pictured in the map, is about 2.5 or 3 miles by 5 or 6 miles north to south. I biked it this morning. Charleston trade, as I mentioned, swelled in the decades after the Revolutionary War, and its Jewish population grew in kind, so much so that by the early 19th century, the city claimed the largest Jewish population in the United States. That's a fact that still surprises many people. Through the 18th and 19th century, Charleston was a bellwether of American Jewish history and home to many Jewish firsts, including the first Jew elected to public office. Including the first Jew elected to public office. So within a year of his arrival in 1773, Englishman Francis Salvador was elected to the General Assembly of South Carolina. He was about 24 years old at the time. He became the first Jew to hold that high in elective office in the colonies. And he would hold that post, unfortunately, for less than 3 years until his sudden death, which I have pictured on the left side. Sorry if that's a bit of a gruesome image. In July of 1776 at the hands of a Native American who were largely allied with the British during the Revolutionary War. Moving on. Kahal Kadosh Beth Elohim, or KKBE, which is also my home synagogue, is one of the first 5 colonial congregations. It spawned also its number of firsts: the first Hebrew Benevolent Society, the first Hebrew Orphan Society, and the first of the Reform movement in the young nation, years before the Reform movement flourished in Cincinnati, and then New York, and then other parts of the country. Oops. In the early 1850s, immigrants from Central Europe began an Orthodox Ashkenazi minyan that became BRITH SHOLOM. 30 years later, Newcomers from Eastern Europe, sometimes called Greeners or Kalushiners, after a core group from Kalushin, Poland. Oh no, hold on, let me get back over to where I was, I apologize. Okay, back again. Settled uptown in a neighborhood that became known as Little Jerusalem. And in 1911, they launched a second Orthodox shul, Beth Israel, a few blocks north of BRITH SHOLOM on St. Philip Street, where the congregation is located today. And that's the building that you see pictured here. BRITH SHOLOM, now known as BRITH SHOLOM Beth Israel, the combined synagogue, was founded in 1854, but this building is circa 1911. After World War II, Charleston stayed ahead of the curve. A conservative congregation named Emmanuel broke from Orthodoxy in 1947, and BRITH SHOLOM and Beth Israel negotiated a merger 10 years later. South Carolina emerged as a leader in Holocaust education and memorialization. And pictured here is Emmanuel's current building that's in West Ashley. So the Ashley River runs along the western side of the peninsula, the Cooper River along the eastern side. So West Ashley is inherently west of the Ashley. In the 1990s, the College of Charleston launched the Yashik Arnold Jewish Studies program. That's where Deb and I work. That has become a prominent program in the Southeast with designated centers for Holocaust education, Israel studies, and Southern Jewish culture. And over the years, our program has put a premium on 3 core areas. I'll tell you just a little bit about what that looks like today, because it's sort of representative of what Charleston's Jewish community looks like today. The first of those areas is academic. So as a Jewish studies program, we have a major and minor with more than a dozen courses offered every semester. The second is student life. So rather than having a Hillel operate as a separate 501c3 or as part of a local federation, Hillel is both physically and organizationally housed within the Jewish studies program at the college. Deb will talk more about Hillel in a few minutes. And then the third area of our program that we really pride ourselves on is our community outreach. So we exist and operate much as a Jewish community center or synagogue does in terms of the cultural and historic programming that we offer, almost entirely free of charge and open to the public. In normal times, we offer more than 50 public events in any given academic year, like what's pictured here in Arnold's Hall. If we were together, that's where we would be meeting right now. Those programs range from Sunday morning brunches, book talks, film screenings, lectures, mini seminars, or large-scale events like Hanukkah in the Square, which we hold in the middle of downtown Charleston every Hanukkah. That's community-wide, and we include representation from every Jewish communal organization in town, which is the nature of what many of our organizations try to do. There's a lot of collaborative programming that happens, which is great. Also at the College of Charleston, the Jewish Heritage Collection at the Addlestone Library has developed an important engine of research with a robust archive of oral histories, primary documents, and Judaica. And the Jewish Studies program, as I mentioned a little bit before, is also the host organization of the Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina, which is, as I mentioned, a statewide organization dedicated to celebrating and teaching others about South Carolina's long and proud Jewish history. Among our signature projects are a comprehensive listing of South Carolina's Jewish cemeteries. We also produce biannual magazines and meetings, though unfortunately we've had to cancel at least one of those already, and we'll hope to get into a regular meeting schedule as soon as possible, as you can imagine. Another one of our major projects that I'll encourage y'all to take a deep dive into later is the Jewish Merchant Project, which tracks the long history of Jews as peddlers and Main Street merchants in both towns, both small and large across the state. That's a narrative that's true of South Carolina and Charleston, just as much as it's true across the South and indeed across the country. Jews often started as peddlers, peddling their wares in small towns. They made their way to Main Street or to corner stores. Often the second or third generation would then catalyst into bigger chains or department stores, but much more often than not, the second and third generation became doctors and lawyers, business professionals, and they moved out of those towns, eventually sort of writing the demise of those towns into reality. I'll encourage you to take a deep dive into that later on. I can give Leah those links where to sort of explore that history, but the Historical Society is jhssc.org. So back now to our timeline of Charleston's Jewish history. In the last 75 years, Charleston's Jews have jumped across two rivers, the ones I mentioned before, with outposts west of the Ashley, now home to Charleston's youngest synagogue, the modern Orthodox congregation Dor Tikva, and east of the Cooper River, where our CHABAD, pictured here, has built a beautiful community center. For Pesach, which was, as you know, sort of ran right into the middle of COVID, where they produced, I don't know, over 1,000 meals that were offered free of charge, and had a really an efficient Seder meal pickup, which we took advantage of. Over the centuries, Charleston's Jews have shared in the city's period of wealth and prosperity. I don't know if that's my computer doing that. I'm sorry for this. As well as its long years of poverty. They were fighters in the two great wars that were fought within the city, followed by 2 world wars. In their businesses and social lives, they've adapted to modernity with an Orthodox element that's more diverse and assertive than ever. In conclusion, Charleston offers wonderful opportunities to explore Jewish history, not to mention Southern charm and hospitality and some of the best restaurants in America. I know that you were going to eat at some of them had this trip gone through, and we'll hope to have you back so that you can experience it in person. Jewish communities have dwindled and disappeared in almost all of South Carolina's smaller cities, though our major sister cities across the state, especially Columbia and Greenville, are both home to sizable, though not enormous, Jewish communities. They too are worth a visit. And we hope to welcome y'all here in the very near future and during healthier times. Before I hand the presentation over to Deb, I'll just offer some reflections on what our Jewish community looks like today. And we'll also ask if she's willing that Deb does the same from her perspective. At our most recent count, the Charleston region, known as the Lowcountry, the South Carolina, is divided into 4 regions: the Upstate, the Midlands, the PD, and the Lowcountry. The Lowcountry has just over 11,500 Jewish residents, with a relatively robust Jewish infrastructure that I've mentioned. Our community does a good job working together with semi-regular large-scale events, which I mentioned. Also, this past Sunday, we held a virtual Yom Hashoah ceremony, which was attended by well over 1,000 attendees, very happily so.
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you mind just sharing what you usually do when we're not experiencing coronavirus for Yom Hashoah?
Absolutely, yeah. So Yom Hashoah is, like many other times in our community and many other communities, a really wonderful time to gather together. We typically do so beginning at our Holocaust Memorial, which is in Marion Square. That's sort of the central park in downtown Charleston, also where we hold Hanukkah in the square, hence the name. Generally, we walk from the Holocaust Memorial in Marion Square and do a silent march from there to another gathering place where people can actually sit down and have a full program from there, whether that's then an opportunity to hear from a main speaker or to read the list of names of survivors whose families settled in Charleston. Charleston was home to and is still home to a number of Holocaust survivors, though certainly it's depressing to see their numbers dwindle. I think now we have 6 or 7 remaining Holocaust survivors in Charleston, though at their peak there were dozens. So sadly, that number has decreased, but we have one who happens to be our neighbor. He lives 5 floors down from me, and so we had him up in our apartment on Sunday, carefully, but he was able to join in for our communal Holocaust commemoration from our apartment. So that's generally what we've done. This year we were joined by a representative from the ADL who spoke, and Charleston's mayor and city council are always really supportive in terms of offering proclamations. Our mayor, John Tecklenburg, did so again this year. And so really there's a tremendous amount of support across our Jewish organizations, but then across, outside of the Jewish community as well, for Holocaust education and sort of broad support of the Jewish community.
Great. Mark, do you want to take questions before I talk about Hillel, or do you just want to save everything for the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can do both, sort of. We can touch on it now. The only piece that I wanted to add on to that, and Deb, I think that you'll definitely touch on it also, just relates to the perception of anti-Semitism and bigotry or racism in the South. That's a question that we get a lot of the time from families or prospective students who say, you know, how can I send my kid to the South? Isn't it racist? Aren't they going to be targeted for, you know, by bigots or anti-Semites? And it's really just not the case. While like any other place, there are sometimes isolated incidents. I don't know in the 8+ years that I've been in Charleston that I could think of more than one or two. And if or when those have taken place, they've almost always been from sort of, I don't want to say outside agitators, but it really is not the norm. Charleston is a wonderful place to be Jewish. The South, in my experience, is a wonderful place to be Jewish, and by and large a comfortable place to be Jewish. That isn't always the case. My wife, who grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, might not say the same thing. She, you know, had some experiences with anti-Semitism growing up, so it's not non-existent, but by and large, it's a really comfortable place to be a Jew. Okay, Deb, over to you.
Great.
And as Deb starts, I'll be scrolling through some images of our students. And so I'll lead off with this one. This is our some of our students last year with our local survivors just before Yom Hashoah. We have some wonderful student-led Holocaust education. And this is Joe Engel, who's the survivor, who's also my neighbor.
I guess this picture is actually a great place to start because it shows the tremendous initiative and leadership of our students in CofC Hillel. They take the initiative to plan all of the events that we run on campus. Me and the other Hillel staff are there to help support them and develop their ideas, but they come to us, they say they want to do something, and then we help make it happen, which we're very fortunate to have the backing of the Jewish Studies program and the community support as our infrastructure. So the students in this started a Holocaust Education Awareness and Remembrance Committee, they call it HERE. That stemmed from one particular student's passion for remembering the Holocaust and Holocaust education in schools. And she started a project that we still continue on campus called the Daffodil Project. She brought it to Charleston from her hometown of Atlanta. And the Daffodil Project aims to plant, I believe it's 1 million daffodils to represent children who died in the Holocaust. And so all over Charleston, you can find daffodils that were planted by CofC students and the greater Charleston community. I believe they're at every synagogue, they're at the day school, and they're all over campus. They're not just in Jewish spaces. And so that's something I think that they are really proud of, is helping be the voice for the next generation. They've been fortunate to learn from Holocaust survivors in Charleston and other places in their lives, but they're the ones who are, really being vocal about it and making sure that their peers know, which to me is incredible. And I'll say also, I only got to Charleston last fall, so a lot of the wonderful things that we do are not to my credit, but I'm happy to tell you about them. But I myself, I'm from Maryland, and even though that's technically the South, at least my family considers South Carolina the real South. And when I said I was going to be moving to Charleston to be the Hillel director, they were like, there's a Hillel to direct there? Like they didn't even know. And I mean, I didn't know before the whole interview process, really how vibrant Jewish life is in Charleston. And Mark really opened my eyes to not just Jewish life on campus, but the thriving Jewish community that exists. And at the college, it's a public university, a public liberal arts school, about 10,000 students. It's mostly an in-state school, but within the approximately 500 or so Jewish students, not so many are from the South. So about a third are from the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. Another third are from the DMV, the Maryland, Virginia, and DC corridor. And then the other third, I would say, are from the Southern Jewish communities. So primarily Atlanta, and then also across Tennessee, Alabama, different pockets of South Carolina. So not very many are actually in state. Not so many of the Jewish students are in state. A lot of the students that are coming from up north we're looking for somewhere warm to go. As you can imagine, that's a big appeal of going to a college like this in the South. Warm weather, right by the beaches. And now that I'm here and I'm interacting with a lot of prospective students and prospective families, as Mark mentioned, one of the biggest questions that we get is, what's it like to be Jewish here? Is it safe? And I think that's a question that's really being asked across America, across the world right now, is by parents, is this place safe for my child? And I am proud to say at the College of Charleston that it is a great place to be Jewish, and it's a safe place to be Jewish. The college itself has been extremely supportive of the Jewish Studies program since its inception. And they've also been, as a result, very supportive of student life, and really helped, even in this past year, me being there, helped integrate me into student affairs and to the larger campus community. We're not a standalone group of the Jewish students, especially the ones who are active in Hillel. If they're active in Hillel, they're likely active all over campus. So there is a Jewish sorority and fraternity here, but there are also Jews in all the different chapters of Greek life, even the traditionally Christian ones that have been accepted with open arms. We have a lot of students who are passionate about the dance marathon that we have here, that they did virtually for the first time this year to much success. And they're student leaders who give campus tours, SGA presidents. I mean, across the board, they're strong leaders, and they're proud to be Jewish. I don't know of a Jewish leader on campus who is a leader on campus that I haven't interacted with, because they look to us for support. They look to Hillel as a partner for the various Jewish and non-Jewish things that they're doing in their lives. And another thing that I think is, there's a lot that's unique about Charleston, the College of Charleston, but there's just such a great community relations between the college and the city and the Jewish community. I have students who are Sunday school teachers at the Reform congregation to the CHABAD Center. So all across the board, students of, we have different students of all denominations here, and actually a growing Orthodox population, which also surprises many. Like Jews in the South, okay, we can get on board with that, but Orthodox Jews in the South is a little bit, raises a little bit more eyebrows, but we're very fortunate to have an infrastructure in Charleston and at the college that is able to support them. At the college, one of the dining halls that is on the meal plan for students, for all students, is a kosher, vegetarian, vegan dining hall called Marty's Place, named after the founding director of the Jewish Studies program here. And it's one of the more popular dining spots on campus, I would say. Happens to be right next to—
It's attached to our building, yeah.
It happens to be right next door to Jewish Studies, so I spend quite a bit of time there having meals with students, but every type of student is in there. It's not just Jewish students. They also do a lot of everything there is compostable, so it's very eco-friendly, and that was so it appeals to more than just Jewish people. There's a little bit something for everybody, and we are working on bringing kosher meat to campus more regularly. There's certainly kosher meat available in the community at grocery stores, at synagogue meals and things like that, but we hadn't had it on campus until this past semester, when a generous donor sponsored us bringing in the kosher caterer in Charleston, having her make meals once a month for the students. And so those have been extremely popular. I've met students who I don't think would have come otherwise to anything related to Hillel, because they heard kosher meat and they're there, because that's something that we're able to provide on campus that they can't get elsewhere. I would also just being part of Jewish Studies, the Jewish Studies program, not all the Jewish students take Jewish Studies classes, although our goal is that they're interested in it and do take them at any point in time, but we offer Hebrew through the advanced courses of Hebrew, which meet the college language requirement, and all of the classes for Jewish Studies meet some sort of gen ed. So the classes that the professors in Jewish Studies teach are usually a liberal arts or a history credit, which means that the classes are themselves, in terms of the student population, are actually pretty diverse. In Yaron Ayalon, the current director of the Jewish Studies program, he is teaching a course on ancient Jewish history, and that class is more more non-Jewish than Jewish. There are certainly a number of Jewish students in there, but it's, you know, students who are curious about it. Here, he's a great professor and are in that class. So I think that's really important too, that other students on campus are, you know about us, know about what we're doing. I think it helps a lot with the acceptance and, you know, the ability for students to be comfortable on campus. And I always feel good when a student comes to a Shabbat meal with and brings their non-Jewish roomie, because to me that's like the ultimate symbol of they feel safe and comfortable here, is that they're willing to share that Jewish part of themselves with others who wouldn't normally see that side of them. Like we have students who have mezuzahs on their doors. People are proud to be Jewish here, and I think, I mean, pretty low bar, but I think we've done our job. The students are proud to say that I am Jewish in a college classroom or on a college campus, because I think that really speaks volumes for the acceptance of this community. I mean, Charleston, even just driving into Charleston, you see signs that are like, Jesus loves you, and it's a little bit overwhelming. You're like, oh, wow, I'm in the South. And then you go to Charleston, which is like this beautiful haven of acceptance of all different types of people. And I think that's really wonderful and unexpected. And I like to tell as many people as possible who are coming to campus about the greater Jewish community, because I think that's really important, that Jewish life doesn't just exist on campus, but there are Jewish business owners, and there are Jewish synagogues within walking distance. There's a Hillel that has events nearly every single day that are student-led and student-run. So I'm just really proud to work at such a wonderful school that has this unique model. I think I've learned more in the past year than I could have, or not even a year, than I could have ever expected taking a Hillel job. I've learned so much about Southern Jewish culture, about Charleston, about working as a university partner, working as a community partner. The Federation is also a great sponsor of our programs. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know it sounds like rose tinted glasses, but I've been here for a year, and it's been nothing but wonderful. So
Wonderful. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is if you could close out of the presentation.
Yeah.
And we're going to open this up for questions. So if you want to either raise your hand physically or do it through the app, please let me know. And let's go from there. So does anybody have a question? Okay, let's hear from Dr. Barbara.
Hi, I'm just kind of curious because we haven't heard Florida included in the South. And to me, Florida's in the South. Do you people consider Florida to be to the north? What is Florida as far as the South is concerned?
So the answer I usually give is that Florida is divided. The Panhandle, northern Florida is the South. Below the Panhandle is absolutely not. That southern Florida is an extension of New York. Geographically, very much so the South. Culturally, pretty far from it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to add to this. I live in Tampa, and I will say Tampa's different. For one thing, you walk down my parents' neighborhood, it literally looks like New Orleans. With first of all, the architecture of the homes, the oak trees with the moss hanging. Also, culturally, you have a lot of people here who have Southern accents and the country clubs, and I definitely think, Tampa has a Southern connection. And if you go through certain parts of Florida, it is for sure, you see the Jesus signs everywhere. And so I just want to put that in there.
More specific. So, yeah, northern and sort of the Panhandle, and then definitely the western coast of Florida as well. I'll tell you what the ISJL, the Institute of Southern Jewish Life, has a pretty amazing compendium called the Encyclopedia of Southern Jewish Communities, where they geographically define the South, and they sort of cut off. They do that region exactly. They do the western sort of side of the state and the Panhandle. But that's southern Florida a bit less so. Yeah, that's a great background you've just changed to.
Sorry, I'm trying to, okay, great. So let's hear from somebody else. Let's hear from Hannah.
Hi, I just wanted to know, you said there were 11,000 Jews in part of Charleston. There's other parts of Charleston you mentioned, so how many in the other?
So Charleston proper is part of the broader region called the LOWCOUNTRY. So as I mentioned, the South Carolina, the state is divided into 4 regions. So the northern part of the state is called the upstate. Just below that, you have the Midlands. Below and to the east of that, you have the PD region, and then south along the coast. So Charleston and Beaufort, Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head are encompassed in the LOWCOUNTRY, and in sort of Charleston and its outlying communities. So sort of within a 30 or 45-minute radius around Charleston is about 11,500 Jews.
So Charleston is 11, but outside of that radius how about all of South Carolina?
You know what? I'm not positive what the entire state's population is. Charleston has the largest population in the state, so more than Columbia or Greenville or sort of other cities in the state. So Charleston is certainly a sizable Jewish community, but doesn't hold a candle to Atlanta, for example, which has a massive amount of Jews. Sort of an entirely different picture.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm looking for hands. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Well, is there anyone? Dr. Barbara? Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I read yesterday or the day before that, or maybe we heard it in the lecture yesterday, that there's been a large influx of Jews to the South in the last, I don't know exactly how many years.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Sorry.
No, tell me a little more about that, please.
Absolutely, and it's definitely a phenomenon that we experience in Charleston. And when we talk about sort of population boom in the Jewish community in the last, I would say probably the last 10 or 15 years, but probably maybe the 20 years, there's a number of Jews who retire to Charleston, who snowbird to Charleston or to the South in general. And so whereas, historically a lot of Jews were snowbirding or retiring to Florida or Arizona, a lot of times now they're coming more so to Charleston or to Hilton Head or Myrtle Beach or Savannah. Those have become really attractive retirement communities or snowbird communities, both for their food scenes, certainly for their climate, but also the increasing sort of Jewish presence leads to that. So when I mentioned a lot of the, Jewish community or public programs that the Jewish Studies program produces and puts on, the vast majority of the people who are coming to those, may have lived in Charleston for 10, 15 years, but they are not native Charlestonians.
Thank you.
All right, so let's hear from Rebecca Hurwitz, or the son.
Yeah.
What's your name?
My name is Natan, and
Hi, Natan.
hearing about about how much about out of all of the Jews in the U.S., what percentage of them are in Charleston?
Oh.
Ooh, that's a great math question.
Yeah.
And Natan, here's the deal. You tell me the total Jewish population in the country. I'll tell you how many we have in Charleston, and we can do some division. But yeah, so you tell me the big number. The small number is 11,500, and we can get some percentage from there. But the short answer is I'm not sure.
Pretty small.
Very small, yeah, 1%.
Yeah. Great question.
All right, do we have any other questions? Here we go.
He's raising his hand.
Norm?
I think that number is about 2%.
About 2%. There you go.
And about 10% live in Los Angeles. No.
All right, let's hear from Judy Weintraub.
So, Leah, this question is more for you. And looking at the topic today, and I'm noticing some younger Beth Am faces, and I'm curious to just open it up there. Perhaps if anybody interested in going to college in Charleston is on this Zoom session today.
I will say this, College of Charleston was my #1 choice when I was in Florida. I wanted to go so badly, but the in-state tuition in Florida ended up winning that situation. But yeah, I mean, I have several classmates that ended up going to the College of Charleston. Whoop. Okay. I'm actually on a chair on my bed because there was a screen behind me, which, okay, so I'm going.
And my wife, who's in the just in the other room right now, also attended the College of Charleston. Here she is. Ellen is a graduate of the College of Charleston, so she can also speak to that student experience.
Great. And then I saw another hand. Leonard and Rebecca. Here, let me unmute you.
Hi. You talked about having a different kind of model where the Hillel at the college had an affiliation, a relationship, or was part of the Jewish Studies program. It was a little different kind of model, it sounds like. Do you know if other colleges have adopted that kind of model that seems to be successful for your community?
There are a lot of different models of how Hillel works. Some operate as their own 501c3, some sit in there are many others who are employees of the college. Some of those sit in student affairs or religious life in general. At the college, there's, I guess because it's a public school, there's no like office of religious life. There are ministers from local churches who have ministries on campus, but the way that we're able to function is, I don't know, Mark, do you want to explain how I'm able to work at the college and be a religious person?
The short answer is no. I have yet to find another college or another Hillel that has the same model. So a little bit of the background of how that happened was, many years ago. So the Jewish Studies program was founded in 1994. As it really developed over the year, I'm confusing my organizations. The Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina was founded in 1994. The Jewish Studies program was founded in 1984. In that time, when it was founded, there weren't a ton of Jewish students at the college. Like many other Jewish Studies programs, it started out because community members and donors said, what if? What if this existed? We want this to exist. They supported it, and therein it existed. And over the years, we began to get Jewish students at the college, and we saw a need. When I say we, this was the Jewish Studies program's leadership at that point, Dr. Marty Perlmutter, who was the program's longtime director. And as Jewish students really began to sort of accumulate on campus, it was clear that there was a need for organized Jewish student life activities that could be student planned and hosted on campus. And rather than going to an outside entity and saying, Hillel, here are your students, come set up, we said this was something that we could do in-house. And so the program began hiring graduates of the Jewish Studies program, first students and then graduates, to sort of begin coordinating those activities. And then really in the last 10 years or so, as Jewish student body has expanded, our staff has expanded also. So we went from one part-time professional to one full-time professional to 1.5. Now we're at 2 full-time professionals plus a person to help recruit Jewish students. And so rather than working with a federation and saying this will be housed under you, or a community foundation or a separate 501c3, we said, we have the infrastructure, we have the space. We opened up our building in 2003, and because we had that space and the ability to sort of host it in-house, we did so. Very happily, we have a great relationship with Hillel International. Deb and I both work closely, Deb especially with Hillel International, myself more from a fundraising perspective, and Deb and our students really get sort of the full access to Hillel International's resources, but we really do retain a unique model being part of the college.
Do we have, okay, so Marshall.
Regarding regarding the Jewish Studies program, do you find you have many non-Jews participating in it? Since I know the South is often referred to as the Bible Belt. So therefore, I would think Christian students might want to understand more about the beginnings of their religious tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Deb, do you want to sort of do it from a Jewish student perspective?
Yeah, so I would say like the majority of the Hebrew classes are Jewish students. I would say probably 80% Jewish. But the Jewish history classes, which we offer, biblical and also modern Jewish history, as well as our Holocaust courses, are extremely popular with the non-Jewish population. The Holocaust courses that we offer here aren't just like history of the Holocaust. It's Holocaust through film and like looted Nazi art from the Holocaust, and like very like interesting niche topics outside of just like, oh, what was the Holocaust and what was its effect, but some really topics that would be interesting to anybody. And I think, yes, in the history classes, which probably are like 60% non-Jewish, so close to half, but definitely more non-Jewish than Jewish. There's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of curiosity there, and I think it's great that it's close to an even mix.
Yeah, Marshall, I'll tell you though, that's really a phenomenon that's true outside the South as well. When Rebecca and I were Rabbi Schatz and I were at Indiana, that was true of the majority of our Jewish studies classes, certainly the introductory classes as well, where perhaps the majority or a large number of the students enrolled in those classes are not themselves Jewish.
I just have to jump in with an unrelated part of Jewish geography, where I was looking up your shul and where it was, and I thought, oh, that's close to my friend who lives in LA. And this friend I met at Hebrew school in Columbia, Maryland, 20 years ago probably. I visited her back in February, and I knew they belonged to a shul, and sure enough, Ben and Alana Rubenstein are proud members of Beth Am, and they say hello, and what a great community it is to be a part of. So gotta love Jewish geography.
That's so nice.
Love it. And can you remind one more time, what's the connection, Rabbi Schatz, between you and Mark? How did you meet? And by the way, thank you so much for making this connection with Mark. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay, my turn to tell the story. So Mark and I both went to Indiana University, and we actually were in Judaic Studies classes together, right? Didn't we take it? Yeah. This was a long time ago, everyone. Mark, what year did you graduate from IU? We graduated in 2010 together from Indiana University. And we met because I started a Jewish a cappella group through the Hillel at Indiana University. And then Mark was part of the group, and we got to sing together, and the group became very close together, and Mark and I and a few others kind of became a close-knit circle. Yeah, so that's how we...
And it's unrelated. I wasn't a part of it yet, but you have to tell the origin story of Hushir also, how it came about generally.
So Hushir, which is this a cappella group that I started, it came about because some of you have probably heard this story before, but the director of Hillel got a call and was asked if we had a Jewish a cappella group on campus, and she lied and said yes. Indiana is known for its music school, and so the White House, who were the people who were calling, thought that we would have a good Jewish a cappella group to sing at their Hanukkah party. So she lied and said that we had one, and then quickly tried to form one. And in forming one, I very hesitantly auditioned. I was in the music school, and I felt like a Hillel a cappella group was not going to be good enough for me. And I auditioned, and I'm so glad I did. It was the best part of college. And then they said, great, you auditioned, and now why don't you run it? So we got to perform. Our first performance was at the White House for George Bush's Hanukkah party. And yeah, that's how it all came to be.
Rest was history.
And Mark is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend, and just one of the many reasons that IU was a great choice.
By the way, I want to mention, so we're having a call on Sunday. We have our film group, and we're doing fried green tomatoes. We're going to do a discussion, but we're being joined by two other people that Mark connected me to from Columbia. They have the blog Kugel and Collards, but also the owner of Hyman's.
Oh, Eli's joining you?
Yes, he's joining. He's going to join and give us a fried green tomato recipe, his own. But yeah,
That's
share
so
his story.
funny.
Their fried green tomatoes are very good.
Yeah,
So
he's a great guy, and very happily he hosts our students once a semester for a free meal, and really they're wonderful supporters of Israel and of our Jewish community. Yeah, Eli Hyman's great.
Great.
Can I ask what, I'm going to have to go. I'm sorry, I've kind of been on and off. I've had phone calls and I have a meeting in 5 minutes. I just want to ask one question that I think maybe someone asked, so if so, just tell me. But I'm really curious for the two of you who are not from the South, or at least this part of the South, what was it like for you and for your Jewish identities to move from Maryland, which is very vibrant in terms of Judaism and the Judaism that is around in that area? I don't know you as well, Deb, but I know that Mark grew up in a very vibrant Jewish environment. And so I'm wondering what it was like for you to find Jewish community and now be creating Jewish community from this place of knowing that it was just around to now having to create it yourselves. And what was that adjustment like for you?
You want to go first, Mark? You have more of an
Sure.
interesting story than I do.
I don't know about that. We have our own stories. So it's been an interesting experience. So I went from Maryland to Indiana, to Bloomington, Indiana, which is not necessarily a Jewish hotbed, though Indiana University very much so was. The Jewish, population of Bloomington like quintuples every time the students show up. And there are like 4,500 Jews on campus. And so going from Maryland to Indiana to Jackson, Mississippi, really sort of moving right into the heart of the Deep South was more the sort of transformative experience in terms of exposure to Southern Jewry than moving from Mississippi to Charleston was. When I started working for the ISJL, it really was my first exposure to Southern Jewry, and really a community that I had sort of no knowledge or understanding of before. How that really happened, I was graduating as a Jewish studies major, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, didn't want to sort of take a next step into graduate school yet, and was meeting with my advisor in Jewish studies who had written her thesis on sort of Southern Jewish culture and folklore. And she connected me with a graduate of the Indiana Jewish Studies program who had also been an education fellow in Jackson. And sort of that was the beginning of my Southern Jewish journey. And so it was really from traveling the Deep South and beginning to gain an understanding of myself as a Jewish communal professional that I sort of gained a understanding and deep appreciation for what it means to be a Southern Jew. And then moving from Mississippi to Charleston and into a really wonderful and warm Jewish community here, it's been interesting, I think less so geographically or regionally than it has as a professional. To be a clergy or educator or lay leader, certainly, but or a nonprofit person within the Jewish community is a different experience than growing up in a Jewish community. So my Jewish sort of identity is really tied to the work that I get to do, and I think that I feel passionate about that wherever I did it, and I love to do it here.
So moving to Charleston, I didn't know anybody Jewish or not, and so the first place that I looked was to the Federation. They have a young adult division where Mark many years ago, not so many, Mark a couple of years ago met his now wife. Maybe I'll meet my future husband there, but they do events at least once a week, and that's been a way for me to kind of get like socially acclimated here, and I think that definitely helped a lot when I first came here before the students were here. I would say like around campus and like in downtown Charleston in general, I'll wear my Jewish necklace, a Hamza or Jewish star, and I'll talk about being Jewish. But definitely, like if I'm in an Uber and they say, "What do you do?" I usually just say I work in student affairs. I don't want to get into the whole, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long the Uber is. I don't want to have to be the spokesperson for the Jewish community at that time. Although I'm sure I'd be met with more curiosity and questions than anything else. But one thing that has been a really great gift here that was unexpected coming to Charleston, before this, I was working year-round for a Jewish overnight camp called Capital Camps that serves about 1,000 young Jews in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And many more coworkers there. I do love the tight-knit staff that we have at Jewish Studies, but one really surprising and great benefit was that there are a lot of really strong female leaders in the Jewish community here who have been great mentors to me. So the assistant director at the Federation in particular, we have similar backgrounds in social work, and she's a great role model and thought partner for me. The BBYO professional down here and a former BBYO professional turned nurse have also been great resources. And then there are a couple of people who work remotely for national Jewish organizations, like PJ Library at the Harold Gordon Spoon Foundation, who have also, reached out to me and offered to, help in whatever way they can. And that's been really nice. I didn't expect to get have such strong female role models here, but they really are the big change makers in the Jewish community, if I can say that, Mark. But really doing lots of great things, and we're really trying to work more together to bring our organizations together. Obviously, everyone works tightly now, but like PJ Library, for example, they expressed need in babysitters from the college, and we put together like a babysitting and tutoring fair for college students, Jewish and non-Jewish, to meet Jewish families looking for babysitters and tutors. And so that's just kind of one example of results that have benefited both of us from these relationships. But Charleston in the South is just a different pace of life. And I think, there's a lot of, and at least in my social circle from before, there was a lot of competition of like, who has the best job, who's moving the fastest, who has the best degree from the best school. And there's a lot of competition. But here in Charleston and in the South in general, it's much more relaxed, and people care about you as a person, and no one's in a rush. And sometimes that's frustrating with traffic. You LA people with your traffic would hate the driving here because people do not even drive the speed limit. But to me, it's given me a chance to kind of like slow down, take a deep breath, and figure out my priorities and my future. So I like it here.
Norm, you asked an interesting question that sort of relates to my Jewish experience also, which is whether or not people wear kippot in the South. And all through college, through high school, and a little bit before high school, I chose to wear a yarmulke. I grew up in a Reform community, but being outwardly and identifiably Jewish was a part of my identity and sort of my Jewish experience. And that's something that didn't necessarily extend into my time in Mississippi. I don't wear a yarmulke now, and I think that's partially about my own Jewish expression as a Jewish communal professional. But to answer your question directly, absolutely, there are plenty of Orthodox Jews who wear a yarmulke in the South. Deb and I have a colleague who's the associate director of our Jewish Studies program, is an Orthodox Jew and wears a yarmulke on campus. We've had students who have worn kippot on campus. Obviously, we have 2 Orthodox rabbis and a CHABAD rabbi in Charleston. They and their balabasim wear kippot on around town. So there certainly is an identifiable Jewish presence, and they're limited, but some kosher dining. We have a kosher dining hall attached to our building. There's a kosher cookie shop. There's identifiable and visible Jewish infrastructure, and
Hyman's offers a limited kosher menu too.
That's right. Yeah, the Chabad Rebbetzin cooks meals that get heated up at Hyman's. Otherwise, Hyman's is full of treif, but they have a kosher oven. But definitely there's outwardly, visible, expressions of Judaism.
And I've been surprised at the number of times that I've just been at restaurants and have seen, like, waitresses wearing their name in Hebrew on a necklace, or just other Hebrew on their shirts. Like, I don't know. I've seen it more than I expected.
Leah,
I have a question.
Just before your question, because I have to go. I just want to share one thing, that one of the modern Orthodox rabbis who has worked in this area is actually going to be on a panel with us, because he's now a rabbi in New Orleans, Rabbi Josh Pernick. He's a dear friend of mine. He also knows Mark very well. So if you have more questions about Charleston at the end of this whole experience, he's going to be the last person that we hear from on the 30th as part of a panel of New Orleans rabbis. So you can keep
Rabbi Pernick worked in our Jewish day school. He taught Judaics and Hebrew at Addlestone Hebrew Academy, and is a true mensch of a man.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Leah, thank you so much for putting this together. Mark, good to see you.
Bye, Rabbi Schatz.
So my question is also kind of a combination of an announcement. So tomorrow we're going to Savannah. We have a 1:30 call with Rabbi Stephen Henkin and Lynn Reeves, a community member. Rabbi Henkin is so kind and nice, and Lynn's a character. She's got lots of stories, grew up there. So Charleston and Savannah, there's an interesting relationship there. They're like sister cities, but they're also, if you could share sort of the relationship with Savannah.
Sure. Yeah. So Savannah's about 2 hours away. And in addition to being, in the capacity of being sister cities, we share a lot of sort of that early colonial history. Long before Jews, I had mentioned at the beginning, before Jews arrived in New York or the Northeast, or, even the West Coast, Jews were sort of in the Southeast. So that was about port cities. Both Charleston and Savannah were port cities. And so we have sort of similar trajectories of Jewish communal life in the same way. And so Shearith Israel, which is in Savannah, is a historic congregation, though they're not quite as old as our historic congregations, that's always the contention. But yeah, really similar trajectories and similar Jewish communities today. I touch base every once in a while with some of the Federation professionals in Savannah, and actually it was a really interesting experience. The JCC. No, I'm sorry. It was actually through the education school at JTS. Had put together a consortium of Jewish communal professionals in the Southeast. And we had the opportunity to get together a number of times and to sort of talk about similar experiences as Jewish communal professionals in this region, and had a good opportunity to touch base with the Savannah professionals, and lots of similarities between Savannah and Charleston, both, in terms of the Jewish community, but then also geographically what it looks like, and history as well.
Wonderful. Well, if we do make it just before Thanksgiving to go to the South, at this point we don't know what's going on, but let's I'm kind of going as if and still being excited. We're going to go to McLeod and do a tour of the Lower Peninsula, go to the College of Charleston.
McLeod's an amazing former plantation. They do a really wonderful, a sort of historic interpretation, and don't sugarcoat the history. There was a really interesting New York Times article, I don't know, 6 months or a year ago, that talked about historic interpretation in southern, in southern communities and on former plantations, and that a lot of the folks who visit those don't necessarily want the sort of full history of what it was like for enslaved people. And McLeod is one of the few places that does it really well.
Yes, they're not it's not Gone with the Wind and having weddings there and that whole sort of contentious debate right now.
There's plenty of that. No, I mean, nobody's having weddings anywhere right now, but lots of have weddings on former plantations.
Okay, well, so thank you so much to the both of you for your time. And so tomorrow we'll see everybody 1:30 in Savannah. So
Enjoy your
All right.
tour of the Jewish South, your virtual
Thank
tour.
you all. Yeah,
Thank
hope-
you
hope
so
to
much,
connect with
Deb,
you.
Mark.
Nice to meet all of you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.